Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Finding It with Father podcast. I am your host, Father Jose Alvarez, and I'm very glad to welcome you to the show. I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving with your loved ones. I certainly did. And the holiday season has now officially started. So enjoy it and let the shopping begin. Not that there isn't shopping throughout the rest of the year, of course, but we know it gets taken to another level between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I can tell you that I know it from experience back in my college days. You know, I worked in retail. I worked at for a couple of years, I worked at the old Burdines store in downtown Miami, for those of you who remember that. And it was a great place. They had top-of-the-line merchandise. They even had 3 restaurants with very, very good food back in those days within the store. That doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. And I also, by the way, worked at the Macy's store in Midtown Manhattan. Did that for about a year. And I can tell you that it was, crazy during the holiday season. You had no time to be bored. Now, some of you might be saying, well, Father, what are you doing? How can you glorify shopping? And there may be some husbands that are very nervous as I talk about all this, but you watch. I'm going to help you in the end. If you're thinking, boy, Father is glorifying shopping, I'm promoting it too much, Father, people tend to overspend when they shop. It's the materialization of Christmas and the holidays, and there's a lot more, to the meaning of the holidays than shopping. It's got nothing to do with the spirit of the season. And to anyone who is maybe saying or thinking those things, all I can think of saying is like, bah humbug, what a Scrooge, right? Of course, if you spend too much, if you overshop, that's a problem. If all you can think about throughout the holidays is just material reality, that's a problem. If shopping keeps you get so consumed in it that it keeps you from exploring and discovering other aspects, other dimensions, right, that bring on great meaning as we anticipate Christmas, that's a problem. But the problem isn't shopping. The problem is a mismanagement of shopping. Shopping can actually, if managed and handled and approached properly, can actually help you find it. It can give you life and give life to other people. And that's why we're dedicating an episode to it. And we're going to tell you all about it. We're going to tell you how to do that. But before we do, as always, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel so you can be alerted as to what we're doing and when the episodes are released, so you won't miss any of them. Hit the like button, hit the share button. Again, we want you to help other people come to know this podcast and be helped by it. And also, we encourage you to consider becoming a sponsor. You can become a sponsor at many different levels. We're very grateful to all those who have sponsored us already, those who continue to sponsor us. You can be a supporting sponsor and sponsor an episode or 2 or a handful of them, or you can become an elite presenting sponsor and, sponsor half of our season or our entire season. And all you have to do is really, contact Denise Roca. The information's there on your screen, and she'll make all those arrangements very gladly with you. So again, give it some thought. give it some consideration. We would certainly appreciate it. All of that funding, as I mention every week, right, goes to building up our reserves so that we can continue enhancing our operations here. We can continue to take on new creations, renovations, right, build up our outreach beyond our parish and school. So it's all for a very, very, very good cause. So let's get ready to shop, but to shop properly. Now, I'm going to begin by saying this, and I'm going to highlight just a few things to think about, okay? The first thing that I think is important to realize is that the desire to shop comes from a good place. It reveals something very good, very healthy about us. And, essentially when you think about it, we shop for one of two reasons. We shop sometimes because we have a need. There's something that, is indispensable that we need to have. For example, a refrigerator breaks down and it's beyond repair. And guess what? You can't live without a refrigerator. It'd be very, 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 very hard to. So you got to go out and buy a new one. Or, and this is what happens most of the time, we don't buy because of a need. We buy because of a want. A lot of times we confuse those. We tend to think that all of our wants are needs. They're really not. They're wants. But wants aren't necessarily bad. What they reveal is a desire, right? To take on new life, to take on perhaps new variety, new dimensions. It's a search for creativity, and that's always good. That comes from God. However, how we manage that is the key. And so, I think we begin first with the realization that, the instinct or the desire to shop is not bad in and of itself. Sometimes, people who tend to shop too much, they feel guilty the minute that thought comes to their head. Well, you don't have to feel guilty. It's all about what you do, not about what you think or feel, that brings on the real guilt or the reason to be really guilty. So when we say, okay, I want to shop for this or I need this, this is a very important principle so that our shopping can be life-giving. You have to embrace the principle that less is more. Less is more. Because what will happen is if we embrace that principle, it's going to wind up being, more cost effective, no doubt. But also whatever it is that we purchase is going to be valued far more than if we, let it all hang out, if we binge shop and we over shop. When we overshop, when we think that more is more, what happens is that we compromise the appreciation of that which we purchase. Now, I remember when I was a kid, I might have been at the time, 9 or 10 years old. And, like every kid, I wanted 10 million things for Christmas. Well, my parents were working parents. They couldn't afford, they would ask, what do you want for Christmas? And I'd say this, that, the other thing, and the other thing, and the other thing. And, the list would ramble on and they would say, stop dreaming. We can maybe get you two things, maybe three. And so tell me what it is that you most want. So clearly I wasn't getting every year everything that I dreamed of for Christmas. Thank God. But I remember one year, I remember on Christmas Day getting a lot more than in previous years. And, by the way, and it wasn't all necessarily coming from my parents. My guess is that, some of my aunts and uncles probably, spoke to my parents and say, well, what does he want for Christmas? And, Mom would say, well, I'm getting him this and this, and, he wants this and that. And for whatever reason, that year I wound up with a lot more of what I wanted, all the toys and, whatever games and it was that I was looking for more than any other years. And I remember on Christmas morning, Christmas Day, just being giddy. I couldn't believe all those things I got. And I like didn't even, I didn't know where to begin. And I would, I remember like maybe for a couple of days, I would run from, one toy or one game to the next. And I'd spend 5-10 minutes here and there. And, I was like starting to get all confused and kind of worn out from the enthusiasm. And I'll never forget that about, I don't know, maybe a week went by, something like that. It wasn't more than that. And I remember sitting there in the living room, and I guess I must have been kind of bored. My mom noticed that, and my mom asked me, she said, "Hey, how come you're not playing with the things you got for Christmas?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, do you feel like playing with them or what?" And I said, "No, not really." And boy, then, she started, "Yeah, you mean after we got you this and that and people got you all these things and now you don't want to play with them?" But that's what happened. And I remember thinking at the time, "Oh my God, I have all these toys. I wanted all these things. How come I'm bored? I was bored." I said, "I should be happy. I'm not that happy. There's something wrong." Yeah, of course I couldn't put my finger on at the bottom of it, but I could feel it even at that young an age that there was something wrong with having all that stuff. I couldn't appreciate any of it, and that is, that happens because we're not wired to take in so much. We don't devour, 3 or 4 types of food at the same time and stuff our mouths with it. We eat one thing at a time. It's similar to like having, one of those great all-you-can-eat buffets, even if the quality is exceptional and you see it and you, you raid what's on there and you start throwing everything and anything on your plate and you proteins and carbs and greens and this sauce and the other sauce and this dessert and the other dessert and like halfway or sometimes maybe even a third of the way, through what you're trying to eat, through the mountain that you're trying to eat, you feel like, you've got the Titanic sinking inside of you. And you lose your appetite. Yeah, because we're not programmed, we're not designed to take in so much at once. When I first started teaching my early years, I was working at it wasn't a Catholic school, it was a private school locally. And at the time I was teaching preschool PE, whatever that meant. Okay, it was like preventing little kids from banging heads, basically, and preschool music. And I would go into the preschool classrooms with my guitar, and I would basically, sing with the kids. And I remember that one year, about halfway through the year, we got this new kid. He was 4 years old. He looked like he was 6. He was far bigger than the other kids, but he was 4. Adorable little guy. I still remember his name. His name was Aaron. He was a chubby kid. He had big cheeks, freckles, was missing all his front teeth. I remember that. And he, he adjusted very well. He was a total extrovert, was always very happy. He got along well with the other kids. It was a great transition. And he loved music. When I'd go in there to music class, he would screech the songs. He would sing so loud. I had to tell him, "Aaron, sing softer." And I remember one day I walked into the class, and Aaron, who was, a good little boy, was sitting all the way in the back. He was crying, sitting in the timeout table. And I walked in, with the guitar, and I said to the teacher, I said, "Hey, Mrs. So-and-so," I said, "Aaron's in timeout." And she said to me, "Oh, Mr. Jose," that's what they called me back then. This is long before I entered seminary. She said, "Mr. Jose, he put himself there." I said, "What do you mean he put himself there?" "He doesn't want to do music," she said to me. And I said to him, "Aaron, what's the matter? You don't like the way I sing?" And he was crying, "No, I got that music." And, I said, all right. And then she, on her way out the door, she said to me, "He's been like that, like for the last 4 or 5 days. He doesn't want to do anything. And he keeps worrying about the next thing that's coming up." And sure enough, as soon as she left and I started playing the first song, he raised his hand in the back. And, I said, what do you want, Aaron? He said, I don't want to go to playground. I said, well, we're not going to playground now. I said, when the teacher comes back, you can tell her. And, of course, he'd go to playground. Then he didn't want to go to lunch. And then he didn't want to go to this or that. And, obviously there was a problem. Teacher spoke to the parents and she said, look, he's been like this. He's miserable, crying all day, for like whole week, whatever it was. And she said, you need to get this checked out. So they took him to a childhood counselor, and he was assessed. And the counselor told the parents, look, he's a very healthy, very normal little boy. He only has one problem. And the counselor said, his problem is that he's spoiled rotten. He's so used to getting whatever he wants that he doesn't know what he wants anymore. And that's what happens when you overshop. You want it all and you wind up wanting nothing. You wind up miserable and poorer. See, husbands, I told you I would be helping you out in this venture. But I do mean it. And the other point that I want to make that will make your shopping certainly more fruitful is you gotta do your homework. Be prepared. Research what it is that you want to buy. It winds up being more cost effective that way. You might stumble onto some bargains. You'll be informed about, possibly some reductions in price that you weren't aware of. Also, you're going to be exposed to greater variety that way. Your range of available goods might be broader than you initially thought to be. The other thing too that it does, you know what it does if you research the stuff, if you do your homework, is it protects you. It protects you from the element of surprise and impulsivity. Because everything, we integrate reality through the senses. So you go to the stores or you go through a catalog, and all of a sudden there's something you really haven't really researched. Something catches your eye, and you get into that. I have to have this, and there you go. And then you wind up having to have 10,000 things, and you shoot yourself in the foot. So being prepared is important. I remember years ago being in a doctor's office. I was waiting for a family member that was having a procedure done, and there was another gentleman there. He was an older man waiting. His wife was having a procedure done, so we struck up a conversation in the lobby there, and I asked him what he did, and he told me he was retired. Then I said to him, I said, well, what did you do for a living? And he said, well, I was a professional player. And I said, like, professional player, like playing like what? And he said, slot machines. And I said, what? And I said, well, how do you do that? He said, no, I did that for a living, and I made a very, very profitable living doing that. And I remember I said to him, don't you like lose your shirt if you're like going to the casinos every day and you're, hitting the, pulling that lever constantly? And he said, oh, no, that's not the way it works. He said, oh yeah, you have to go to the casinos. He would go to I think he told me he would go to the Miccosukee place every night. He said, no, you go and you spend hours there, but you spend hours studying. You spend hours researching, observing the trends in the machines, because they all have patterns, and you don't play really sometimes for weeks. But eventually, once you're fairly certain of a certain pattern, you'll say, okay, this machine is about to pop. And so that's when you go in and you pull the lever, make the kill. And very interesting. He said, if you don't do If you don't do your homework, right, and you just act impulsively, he said, it'll kill you. Of course, same concept. And, lastly, I'll say this. I mean, we can think about all those things, but ultimately, like Nike says, you just have to do it. Just do it. Just exercise the discipline, the self-discipline. Because what that's going to do for you, look, that's going to boost your self-esteem. You're going to say, wow, I'm actually managing this. This is not managing me. And what it's going to do, it's also going to enhance your self-discipline in other areas of life. If you happen to have kids, what you're also doing is you're modeling the right things. You're not sending them mixed signals. Listen, kids are going to imitate everything that they see. And, kids are going to be kids. Kids are going to want it all, right? So if they're asking you for everything and you're telling them, no, you can't have this and that, and they see you having everything, then they start making you feel guilty and they tell you you're unfair and this and that. And sometimes you might fall for those gimmicks, and then you buy them everything, you buy yourself everything, and then it's just a disaster. No, model for them what they need to learn. You're going to be helping them to mature significantly as you continue to mature significantly. So, you see at the end of the day, when you look at all this stuff, you can see that shopping can be, if handled properly, if managed properly, a great spiritual exercise. Can help you grow in a variety of ways, bring you new life, certainly to other people as well. And I told you that from the very first episode of this podcast. I told you that the spiritual life involves a lot more than just going to church and praying and, doing charitable deeds for others. Those are foundations. But, everything that we do is a spiritual exercise if we approach it from that lens. God doesn't waste an ounce of life or of anything we do to try to guide us, to help us grow, help us find new life. And so, enjoy your shopping, do it moderately, certainly, and let it bring you life throughout this beautiful season that we now have. And, from now through Christmas, obviously, there's a lot going on. A lot goes on. And the goal from now to Christmas is hopefully, you want to achieve the reverse of what often happens, right? What often happens, we're so busy, we're running from this to the other thing that by the time we get to Christmas, we're exhausted and joyless. That's not how it's supposed to work. In the season of Advent, right, which takes place now, leading up to Christmas, we focus on increasing light, increasing joy. So in our next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to try to help you prepare for Christmas in such a way so that your hope, right, your light, your joy may increase as you get there. We're going to focus on what things you can do in your life to prepare for Christmas so that you'll be refreshed and you won't get that beautiful, beautiful, special celebration of our Lord's birth with your tongue hanging out. Okay. So that's next time. In the meantime, as always, we thank you for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, a wonderful Advent. And keep trying to find it. Keep trying to find life. Keep trying to find God, Jesus, who's already there. And we will catch you next time.